He thought he was just stopping to help a little girl with her shoelaces, until her name ripped open a door in his past he'd been keeping shut for years. Manhattan that evening was in its usual rhythm, lights blinking in lazy sync with the traffic's hum, the smell of roasted chestnuts drifting over from a cart at the corner. James Caldwell, the kind of man who usually had no space for interruptions, CEO face in the magazines, calendar tighter than a drum, was striding toward his waiting black limo when he caught sight of her. She couldn't have been more than 5, blonde hair glowing under the street lamp like it had caught a piece of the sun, shoulders hunched on the curb by the park entrance while a pack of kids ran off laughing. Her hands were tangled in the bright pink laces of her sneakers, pulling, twisting, failing. And when she gave up, tears ran clean tracks down her cheeks. He should have kept walking. He never stopped for strangers. But something made him step off the sidewalk, shoes clicking on the damp pavement, and crouch down so they were eye level. "Hey there, trouble with the laces?" His voice came out softer than he'd meant. She just nodded, eyes wide, measuring if he was safe. James took the laces, slow and careful, not rushing, almost like the tying mattered more than the knot itself. When he gave the bow a final tug, she smiled, small but real, and it hit him harder than it should have. "My name's Lily," she said. Simple. But her last name, when it came a minute later, froze him in place. Clark. The air seemed to thin around him. Clark, the name of the woman he'd loved and lost. Emily, who had left without warning after one fight too many, her stubborn chin the last thing he saw before the door closed. He hadn't spoken her name in years, buried her memory under work and ambition. But here was a little girl with Emily's eyes, same impossible blue, same half-curious tilt of the head. He asked casual questions, tried not to stare. She told him her mom had died. She'd never met her dad. She lived out past the city with her grandma in a creaky house with a leaky roof. She didn't say it for pity. She just said it like it was weather, a fact you live with. And James felt something in his chest shift. That night, alone in his high-rise apartment, skyline glittering outside, he kept replaying her voice, saying her name. The math was brutal in its simplicity. She was 5. Emily had been gone 6 years. He could picture it now. Emily alone, pregnant, carrying a life he never knew existed. He told himself it might be coincidence, but the truth was gnawing at him. By morning he'd decided. Through a favor, he traced her address. A sagging white house on a tired street, pots of struggling plants along the porch. Her grandmother answered the door, silver hair in a bun, eyes sharp enough to read him in one glance. She didn't invite him in until he said Lily's name. Inside, the living room smelled of old books and chamomile tea, photos lining every wall. One stopped him cold, Emily younger, holding a newborn swaddled in a blanket. Her grandmother didn't waste words. Emily had died suddenly, 5 years ago. And yes, Lily was his daughter. Emily had thought about telling him, but decided he was too consumed by his work to be the kind of father Lily would need. Money couldn't fix what she'd been missing: love, presence, patience. He left that day carrying more weight than he'd ever walked with, but also a resolve he couldn't shake. He started small, showing up at the park, sitting nearby while she played, letting her choose if she'd come over. Bit by bit she did, shy questions, little stories. He repaired their roof anonymously after a storm, bought her clothes that wouldn't make her stand out. Her grandmother kept him in check. Don't dazzle her. Show up. Mean it. The more time he spent with her, the more he saw Emily in her. The spark when she argued a point. The way she tilted her head when curious. But there were pieces of her that were wholly her own, shaped by resilience and quiet strength. One day, eating warm pretzels on the grass, she said she wanted to be important, so no one could laugh at me again. That one stuck with him. Then the twist he never saw coming. A call from her grandmother, voice shaking. Lily had collapsed at school. A heart condition Emily had kept private now demanded immediate surgery. James didn't hesitate. Shares were sold, contracts ignored. He was at the hospital every moment they'd let him, sleeping in a stiff chair, watching the rise and fall of her breath. The surgery day stretched into an eternity. When the surgeon finally emerged to say it had gone well, James felt the kind of relief that robs your legs. He didn't care what it cost, financially or professionally. She was alive. Recovery brought them closer. Her eyes lit up when he visited, and he began to see expectation in that light. One afternoon, when she was asleep, Her grandmother handed him a taped-up box. Inside were Emily's letters, years old, never sent. In them she told him about the pregnancy, about her hope he'd one day be ready, about her wish that he'd find Lily and love her the way I know you can. He read them all, each word cutting and healing at the same time. The decision wasn't a decision anymore. He was already in her life. The only question was how completely. 2 years passed. He'd stepped down from the relentless grind of running his company, a move that baffled the business press. Mornings were now for packing Lily's lunch at her grandmother's kitchen table, afternoons for bike rides, library trips, or baking cookies that somehow vanished before dinner. She was taller now, more confident. The girl who once sat on a curb with untied laces now laughed loud, asked big questions, and knew her worth. Telling her the truth took months of thought. It happened one cool autumn evening on the porch, the sky painted pink and orange. He told her about Emily, about how he hadn't known she existed. There were tears, silences, then a quiet leaning into his side. That night, she called him Dad for the first time. And then, one spring afternoon, they were back in the same park. Lily ran ahead to the swings, hair catching sunlight, then ran back, stopping when she saw one of his laces loose. Without a word, she crouched, looped, pulled, and grinned up at him. "Now I'm helping you, Dad." It hit him like a full-circle chord, perfect and simple. This wasn't about grand gestures or dramatic reconciliations. It was about presence, about a hand slipping into yours as you leave the park, and realizing the life you have now wasn't bought, wasn't planned, it was given. A second chance you almost missed. And maybe that's where I leave you, with the image of a man who thought success was measured in boardrooms, now measuring it in the curve of his daughter's smile as she ties his shoes. Some will say he didn't deserve that second chance. Others will say he earned it by showing up. But what do you think? Is redemption a gift we give ourselves, or something we have to prove every single day? You'd think that tying shoelaces in the park would have been the final chapter, a neat little bow on a story that had already done its fair share of bending and breaking me. But life, I've learned, doesn't really care about tidy endings. It just keeps walking with you until you hit another bend in the road, and sometimes those bends make the first one look easy. It was about 6 months after that afternoon in the park. Lily had just turned 8, and she'd been lobbying hard for a real birthday party, balloons, cake, friends from school. I'd gone all in, maybe a little too much in her grandmother's opinion. But seeing her running around with frosting on her chin felt like the kind of overcorrection I was happy to make. I thought I'd finally settled into this role, like the jagged edges of my past had finally sanded down to something livable. Then the envelope showed up. No return address, just my name in a handwriting I didn't recognize. Inside was a single photograph, Lily at maybe 3 years old, sitting on a porch swing I'd never seen, with a man's arm around her shoulders. The face was cropped out, but the message on the back made my chest lock up. "You're not the only one who's been in her life." I didn't tell her grandmother at first. I just kept staring at that picture, wondering who the hell had been close enough to have their arm around her before I even knew she existed. Was it just some family friend? Someone Emily had trusted? Or someone Lily still remembered? The more I thought about it, the more it messed with my head. Because I'd built this careful thing with her, brick by brick, and now here was a shadow leaning over my shoulder, making me wonder if the foundation was mine at all. A week later, the shadow got a name. We were at the grocery store, Lily trailing me down the cereal aisle when a man's voice said, "Hey, kiddo." She froze, slowly turned, and the smile that broke across her face, wide, unguarded, almost guilty, told me everything I didn't want to hear. His name was Ryan. He'd been Emily's neighbor after she left New York, helped out when Lily was small, sometimes looked after her when her grandmother's health dipped. He didn't say any of this with arrogance, but with the calm of someone who had no idea he'd just cracked open a fault line inside me. Over the next few weeks, Ryan started showing up more, at the park, outside school, stopping by her grandmother's house. Always polite, never confrontational. But Lily lit up around him in a way that twisted my gut. I told myself it wasn't competition, that this was about what was best for her. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel the old, ugly reflex to guard my territory. One night, her grandmother caught me in the kitchen after Lily had gone to bed. She didn't mince words. If you're going to be in her life, you have to make peace with the fact that you're not the only one who cares about her. It stung because she was right, and because I didn't know if I could. The turning point came on a Saturday when the three of us, me, Lily, and Ryan, ended up in the same park by accident. Lily was on the swings, pumping her legs hard, calling for us to watch. Ryan got there first, giving her a push, and she squealed in delight. I was standing a few feet away, feeling like a guest at my own kid's party. Then she jumped off, ran to me, and grabbed my hand. "Your turn, Dad." 2 words, but they landed like an anchor in deep water. I realized then that this wasn't a contest. She wasn't choosing between us. She was building a bigger circle. We spent the rest of the afternoon together, the 3 of us, and by the time the sun was dropping behind the trees, I'd stopped keeping score. I still keep that first photograph, the one that shook me, in my desk drawer. Not as a reminder of what I almost lost, but as proof that loving someone doesn't mean being their only source of light. Sometimes, it just means being one of the constants they can count on. And yet, I'd be lying if I said I didn't wonder what happens when she's old enough to start asking her own questions about Emily, about me, about Ryan. Will she piece together a version of the truth that keeps me in the picture? Or will she look at the years I missed and decide I was just late to the game? That's the thing about second chances. They're beautiful, but they're never guaranteed. You can do everything right now and still not control how the ending reads later. So, I'll ask you again. Is showing up today enough to erase the days you weren't there? Or do the ghosts of your absence always get a seat at the table?